Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. And of course, all of you are our co hosts on this channel as we talk all things science fiction and tabletop role playing games. Of course, you can join the show live on Twitch, YouTube, our own Discord server, Facebook, or even participate later on. Now, today, this future Friday, we end our series as we talked all week long about gender and gender fluidity and politics and sexuality and that kind of thing. Something lacking in controversy, I think. And yes, sarcasm. But today on Future Friday, you guys who may be brand new, and of course you guys have been here a long time, I like to talk about not just science fiction, but even transhumanism. There are role-playing games like The Expanse and Eclipse Phase, and of course Altered Carbon, where it's not just science fiction in the future, but technology has come to the point of becoming wish fulfillment, in which the time, energy, and resources it takes to achieve the thing that we want has the cost has come down so much that it's almost as if we can just um wish it to be. And in classic science fiction, of course, we have ourselves everything from colonists to alien invasions and war. But one of the things that tends to be put to the side, a lot of times, either because the in speculative fiction, the writers don't necessarily want to focus on this part, or it could be due to, if you bring up this subject, it takes away from the point of the science fiction, and that has to do with gender. Now, we understand that gender has a lot of mechanical parts to it. And we can kind of break it down in terms of how technology would eliminate, remove, modify, or even enhance some of these things that today we call gender. Now, on a personal note, I love the idea that in a transhuman society, that the things today that we, the hill that we would die on is completely eliminated in the future. Like there are people today who are literally suffering pain and torture and um, social exile and being punished and not receiving fair treatment simply due to their gender and or sexuality and the how we like to place people in various statuses. And I think this is where the technology that allows us to eliminate a problem might not be eliminated, because we as humanity tend to have a lot of limitations on these kind of things. So let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about the technology itself. So as we as we get into further periods of time into the future, if you're writing a story or you're coming up with a setting, gender, we understand, may take a back seat in terms of, when you're a colonist and you're going out into space, it, muscle structure and the differences in body structure between male and female might start to fade a little bit. We understand that pilots and astronauts, they have size and weight restrictions as we see it today. The same might be in the future, as well as until a calcium hack comes about in the far future, there are, our heart and muscle and even blood flow and brain matter might start to mix and flow and change. And so, of finding those of us that are on the extreme ends of the gender norms might not be desired to go into space, as well as the fact that we do understand that having a sexual drive in tight confined spaces might not be needed as well. And so using technology to very easily, I'm sure in the future and in a lot of our fiction, having a simple injection or a pill or something of that nature in which we can either turn off our sex drive, eliminate sex organs completely, having a balance of testosterone and estrogen and these other chemicals in our bodies that force our bodies to flow from one extreme to another, to regulate those outwards for colonists and explorers and such, might be needed in the future as well. Also, Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek is a good example of the everyone wearing the the silver jumpsuit and looking rather androgynous, because in the future, the need to we may not need or have any need to have gender separation, because with maybe exowombs and uh, the complete desire to have or not have children, through cloning and things like that, a lot of that might just be removed, and it might just be by choice. Moving even further into the future, we have ourselves cortical stacks and resleeving and morphs. In transhumanism, the idea that humanity would have basically a black box, a thumb drive, in the back of the head, a cortical stack, like in Altered Carbon. Their cortical stacks look like a chunk that you slip in between your vertebrae, and it instantly records, like a black box, records every experience you've ever had. It becomes you in a digital form. And if your body's destroyed, you can have that cortical stack sleeved into another body. Boom, download it, and you're inside of another body. And that other body can be of various ages, sizes, and of course genders. And when that technology becomes ubiquitous or commonplace, when our protagonists are maybe the local population can't do this freely, but when you're a firewall agent in Eclipse phase and you're running around with guns, and you're ego cast or needle cast from one planet to another, swapping genders becomes a trivial thing. And it remains to be seen, like, hey, if I'm a duty dude who's all, dude and manly, and I get sleeved into a female body, does it really matter if I'm like an agent or something? Or maybe I need to sleeve into another body, to perform a particular task, maybe using assassination or espionage or something, and really embracing the new gender. And we, of course, today, we don't know if this is going to be a fact, but do we hold on to our own gender specified ideal of ourselves if we are put into another body? Like would a man in a woman's body, would we start to change in our perceptions of how we look, whether it comes through like desire and how we perceive ourselves and others? So that's the question we're going to ask today, and have some fun with it too. Come up with some stories, some dark turns, some fun things, and things like that. All right. So Mike says, of course, all of you are co-hosts, Mike being one of them, says gender and sexual identity when it comes to robots, uploaded personalities, consciousnesses, holograms, and the like become a discussion of necessity. In other words, is their gender or sex an issue? Exactly. Like if you today, in our modern day, we understand that some of us are born, psychologically, are born into bodies that we're like, oh, I'm comfortable in my own body. We also know that there are people who are not at all in the body in which they perceive themselves. But the minute we become digital information, and we can, in a digital format, we can become any avatar we want at any time. What would that avatar look like? Like, given zero limitations, and it even not even just choosing what we want, but I wonder what we would look like, how we would arrive. Hey, kitty. Yeah, thank you for being here, but you're gonna have to get down. uh Role playing and kitties, yeah. But yeah, the idea that I wonder what our truest self would look like, um, removed from our own expectations. But that'd be kind of cool to see that as well. So yeah, I agree with you there, Mike. Like what? Like a robot? Robots don't need a gender, but would that gender be something that makes us comfortable? Or I mean, we today call things male and female, that have you know, automobiles, ships, computers, that kind of thing. So we already give a gender identity to inanimate objects. So it's kind of funny that we maybe in the future we might do that as well. Mike says Guardians 2 had robots with and without genders. Spider-Man 2099 had a hologram with a gender, yet the vast majority do not. Exactly. I think a lot of that has to do with our own um, to make us more comfortable than it needing to have a gender. Heck, in the Blade Runner 2049, our main character had a relationship with a hologram, a lady hologram that I believe he picked up at a storefront or something. Mike continues to say, consider the solid holograms in Star Trek. Yep. The holodeck literally turned light constructs into beings. Did they have or understand gender? Exactly. Oh, all right, Z. No problem. I will wait patiently. Hmm. Dead Man mentions Dead Man being an expert on Eclipse Phase, the role playing game. In that setting, Dead Man says Bert from the Eclipse Phase core books does care about her gender role, though she is an artificial general intelligence, so she has no biological sex. So, in other words, in that story, there is an AI, a literal digital consciousness that takes on a physical form, and has chosen to identify herself with a feminine form. And it does beg the question, like, maybe there are it, gender and sexuality on one hand might be considered a distraction, like I started out our conversation, meaning like, hey, listen, if I'm going to be an assassin or a mercenary, or we're going on an extended mission to the Oort cloud or something like that, like, maybe I don't need sexuality and sexual organs and be distracted by all that. Like, hey, heck, even if I could have an artificial realm to go in, maybe I can use that as a version of going to the movies, right? Like, yeah, I can do that in virtual reality. The rest of it, our bodies, we don't need any of that. I'm allowing you guys to, because I see Z has a long comment there, and I want to make sure it gets in there. But on the other hand, I did bring into when I advertised this episode that there might be like retro-culturalists who have habitats that are who desire to bring back specified gender roles because people feel like that is being lost. Like, men need to be men, women need to be women, and we're going to lose that in our culture or our history or something of that nature. All right, let's get into our co-host here. Mike Gould says this also raises the idea of an artificial identity who desires a gender just to fit in. Exactly. Like there might be, I mean, whether it comes to fitting into corporate society, or there are there are people who are in habitats around who are doing gas mining around Neptune or something, and that family might socially it might fit in, and you may choose a particular gender. Or let's go with some of our pronies out there who are co-hosts and fans of the show. Maybe there are plenty of people who are like, you know what, be falling on either end, being specifically male or female. We don't want that in our society. As a matter of fact, we expect you to be fluid. There might be festivals or certain occasions, or maybe you're looked at as kind of like bizarre. Like, why are you still rolling around in that male, that 80% male form? And the person's like, I'm just comfortable in it. And everyone's looking at them like, I don't know. We're like a woke society. Like, shouldn't you be changing that up a little bit? Like, we expect you to do that, right? A habitat where that's expected may be a thing. And you can also have the the Amazonian styled habitats as well, all female, all male, through genetic manipulation, morphs, resleeving, that kind of thing. Okay, let's get in the co-host. All right, here we go. Hey Z. All right. Samara says, so if I may, I feel the reason why we are so expressive when it comes to gender today is because on a two-part, we can afford to be socially, and knowledge of options and options are more. Oh, because we can afford to be socially, and knowledge of options and options are more. Here we go. Accessible. Using eclipse phase as a setting, using gendered terms might become an extreme, as someone can change bodies at will, easily confusing the matter. Yeah, exactly. Also, let's see, gendered acknowledgement is useful only because of the species' need to breed. Take away that through any means, and that will rid us of the need to even consider gender. And that's before you get to, ooh, here we go. That's before you get to uplifting. Yep, uplifting of animals, and that even complicates things as well. If you're an uplifted a reptile or a frog or something, that confuses things, or fish or whatever, where you're just breeding by dumping eggs and sperm into a fluid, you know. But anyway, Zamar says, now for my downer. Uh-oh. This will likely mean that gender consideration will likely be left to the rich who can afford the time to play with it, or worse, the ability not to be, uh, or worse, the ability not to be will be paywalled. Yeah. And the paywall might not be money. It might be servitude and uh, editing of personality and capabilities and things like that. Yes, yeah, oh yeah, servitude. But that will also mean, thanks to how nature works, there will be people who will advocate for all to experience it by gift or force. Yeah. I will get back to the other comments there, Dead Man, Mike, and everybody. Zamora brings up a ton of different subjects, because the problem with transhumanism, and I'm a glass half full person, I'm a very positive individual. The problem with new technology is who gets it first, and unlike the polio vaccine, which was given away for free, and all drug companies were like, "Hell no, we ain't doing that at all ever again," is when it comes to like transhuman space, and we go to different habitats and planets and things, what do they expect of you when you get there? Is it given away for free? Is in a very strange way, are people who feel them internally are gender fluid today are forced into genderized roles. You better dress an appropriate way, you better act appropriate way. The opposite could be true in some other habitats. Why have you cemented yourself into a gender? And even um I see you guys in the chat, and I'm going to get to it. Even the idea that what was the show, Black Mirror, two gentlemen were best friends, and they ended up starting a relationship in virtual reality, where one of them took on the female role, and he fell in love with his friend. Then when they got together physically, they didn't have the chemistry. And some people had a huge problem with that, because they were like, well, wait a minute, shouldn't they have categorized themselves as one or the other? Like, what was the problem with these two guys finding out that they were in love with each other? And the show stopped in the middle ground, where no, they weren't compatible, same gendered, but they were compatible in a virtual reality where one of them took on the gender of the other. And maybe there might even be relationships where, hey, two people who aren't physically compatible, but they're like, you know what, we belong together. You know what I'll do? I'll sleeve into another gender, because I am that devoted to my partner. Or maybe two partners are like, hey, let's rent a body and switch off on it or something. Or you go to down the dark side, like Zamara says, you could get forced into genders you don't want to, and that takes on that really takes on a new role in terms of forced of not just human trafficking, but mind and body trafficking. you know, Pretty bad. Okay, all right, here we go. Michael says this also raises the idea of an artificial identity who desires a gender just to fit in. Dead Man goes back to Burke. Burke's actual name is Becky Transfinity, Becky Transfinity. I like that name. Um, Mike says, I believe there was a sci-fi horror movie in the 80s where a robot observed human behavior and became, in essence, a sexual predator. Saturn is something, maybe. Um, uh, whew, it- when when AI becomes aware, we are the worst example for AI to follow. Unfortunately, man. Michael says this relates back to Pinocchio and Data in some ways about a construct who desires the ability to be human. And like Dead Man says, it was the 1980 sci-fi horror movie was called Saturn 3. Yeah. Hey, Kylie. Hey. Vampanoy mentions one of the actors from that Black Mirror episode is standing behind you. Sure is. Anthony Mackie. Yep. Right there. The Falcon. Pretty I felt it was a pretty good episode because it it kind of brought up the fact that technology might allow us not to have to make a choice that means we don't have to make that choice, right? Like for those who fall on either extreme, you're either heterosexual or you're not, or the others who are like, hey, you're either homosexual or not. It actually fell right in the middle, and technology allowed them to exist in that nebulous space. We might have to come up with new names for that kind of thing. Mike says of virtual reality relates back to the hologram issue. I can imagine several polyamorous VR relationships. Oh, listen, how many? I guarantee you, gamers today, if you could, uh, I don't know, attach a haptic response thing. There would be plenty of male testosterone filled gamers that would absolutely absolutely put on the a lot of female avatars and have themselves a little fun, right? Now, it does beg the question: i- i- would the technology just allow us to play with a thing that other people are like, no, this is my life, like this isn't a plaything, or would the technology open up a space where we no longer play in that arena and we just openly accept like, oh, by the way, when I'm in this game I am of this particular gender, but also when I go on missions, especially when I'm in this light gravity place, I like to be in this other gender. And of course, let's not forget Dead Man Prop, I'm sure is sitting back like, oh, bring it up, DBJ. Right, there are in Eclipse phase, there is a specific morph known as a doll. It's called a pod, and they were created. Literally, that biological morph, somewhat biological, has the ability to shift its own gender around. Now, we we understand the minute that someone designed a morph like that, it instantly became something that was used uh, as a slave enslavement tool. Hey, you're going to be in this morph and you know become my own sexual desires. But on the other hand, it also allows quite a bit of freedom for people who are literally gender fluid and can, and if they're mentally gender fluid, their body expresses the same thing. Yeah. Dead Man says, like Burke and Pivo in the short story, yep. Burke in her gynoid or female android morph, and Pivo is a neo octopus. Yeah. When we start uplifting animals and we can place our brains inside of synthetic morphs and animals, gender kind of like gender becomes a problem, actually. Like, no, we don't need any of that kind of thing. uh, Zamar says, oh god, the future is now sent to horny jail. Yeah, you might have to put that on a shelf somewhere. Yeah. Pleasure pods. Dead Man says pleasure pods and shapers both have sex switches, and it can shift them around. And in one of, I think, Eclipse Phase First Edition, like the opening storyline is a gentleman that wakes up, like he's an experienced agent, a firewall agent, wakes up. He's like doing the the mental assessment of his body, realizes he's in a female body. I think it's a fury morph, kind of can feel like the bruises and the adrenaline ability inside the body. He has a nicotine addiction and can feel like or no, he wakes up and realizes the morph has a nicotine addiction, and it can actually like smell and feel like the cigarettes on the fingertips and stuff. And it begs to question, that story kind of hinted at the fact that in our own bodies today, we might have particular desires, but if we are now transplanted into another body by force or choice, a dead man says that was Sava. She is female. Is the was the morph female and the mind? I for some reason this I don't remember the short stories exactly. I kind of remembered that the individual, the agent, was male in a female morph body, or maybe she was just female and jumped around. But it doesn't matter. The whole point being that I wonder if there is something intrinsic in our brains, at least today. Maybe those who are second, third, fourth generation humanists might not even think of this way. But if we are sleeved into another gendered physical form and we have our own minds, I wonder if we'll start to flow into this other body. Similarly, like if we are inside of a body that's taller, shorter, wider, different racial type, um, uh, has senses that are slightly different. I've got bad eyesight and I'm pudgy, right? Someone slips into my body and they're just like, ugh, when can I leave? Right? So, yeah. Michael says, I believe it was Dennis Miller who said something like, the day an unemployed steelworker can sit home and fuck insert model's name in VR for 50 cents, it's going to make heroin look like like Sanka. Yeah, yeah. Well, hell, in a because I was gonna talk about some encounters, some storylines or something, and we've gotten to the halfway point. So let's talk about that. Stealing, there would be a black market in stealing both the biological body, genetic makeup of individuals, the sexy, the famous, the beautiful, and growing them in tanks and selling them, as well as copying and editing the cortical stacks, the brains of those same individuals. We already see this today, where there are sex tapes put out. How if you could sit at home and plug that into your computer and put a VR headset on, or plug it into the back of your brain, or whatever, however you would upload or something, people would definitely buy that. you know. Oh hell yes, they would. It would be very lucrative. Mike says Detroit Become Human, the video game, addresses robots and gender very well. There's some heartbreaking storytelling in there. Exactly. There would, when it would be pretty interesting for, like, I don't know, a soldier to steal the AI that was in their battle tank, and that battle tank decide it's like wants to the soldier's a male, and the AI is like, you know what, I want to become female because I want to partner with this soldier. And then the soldier's like, I love you too. you know. Yeah, Dead Man brings up Morph and Mind. Zamar says, actually, that leaves a very interesting question that can be mentioned, but probably shouldn't be discussed on YouTube. How would sleeves affect the sex worker market? I want to say it would end up like the voiceover market. It's very accessible to learn, so most prices are dirt cheap for equal quality, and most people prefer that now because they expect it. There would I think today we all walk around with a telecommunication device that can essentially turn it on, produce a movie, turn it off, right? But not all of us are very good at um, being artists. So I think there would both be a very dark, very deviant black market, but I also think there would be very high class individuals who most easily flow into other gender roles that they can then copy and sell to other people. Like it wouldn't feel jarring to slide into their bodies or something like that, right? Like to slide into their roles as they become these other things. Much like a very good actor or actress in a movie is better than uh, you know another person, right? It's a subjective kind of thing. I think would probably be something in the future. And I'm making that up. I don't know. Technology might even erase that. Kylie says depends on whether sex workers had rights and protections when sleeving becomes a thing. Yep. Yeah, it does depend on whether they actually have rights or something, or whether they would be highly protected. I'm sure certain habitats would have rules and regulations on it, or maybe there might even be a version of an underground railroad in space where the underground hyper uh, thing where people are trying to escape servitude, or there might be copies of yourself out there that you are trying to free from servitude because someone copied your brain or biological body and sold it to the highest bidder. And agents are out there or are out there trying to confiscate that information back. Plura says, my body is definitely wider than it should be, to be honest. I'm with you. I am with you. Oh man, Mike's like, oh my God. The clone sex worker black market. There's a dark trail. Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Well, in Eclipse phase, there is at least one criminal organization known as the Nine Lives, and that's what they do. And in the Altered Carbon television show, our protagonists go to someone who literally has cortical stacks sitting at the front counter like you would leave change when you're buying something, and those cortical stacks just hanging around, no big deal, for sale. And of course you can edit them because if you're downloaded in a cortical stack, you can edit that information. It's pretty nasty. There's even a I remember an old Krypton, yes, Superman, an old Krypton storyline where one of Kal-El's ancestors, they had clones, and whenever some of them suffered damage, they would hack off a piece of the body of one of their clones, and one of them went crazy, took a clone of their mom, put her in a basement, and was using her as a sex toy. Ugh, dark. Plur says, to be honest, I don't think we're that far. There is some interesting tech already, though it makes me think what happens when meat just can't satisfy the way a machine can. Yeah, we tend to think that the human experience is the epitome, but machines might be able to offer us a pleasure that we don't know exists. And that, I mean, even sexually, I'm not talking like literally plugging into the pleasure center. I'm talking about visually, like there might be an eye color, a body shape, a voice intonation that we didn't even know isn't attractive to us. And it might border on mind control, to be honest with you. Kylie says some people want a sex worker for sex. Some, though, are looking for a furling, a loving partner. Those clients would prefer human partners to robots. A a foot. Oh, a feeling. I'm not sure for that reference, but I think I get what you mean. Like an individual who's used specifically as a relationship partner. But I think in Japan, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in Japan there are, I have to use this air quotes, there is an industry of workers that are non-sex workers, that they are relationship workers, if I'm not mistaken. And I think there's even apps out there, companies that have apps where people uh, have relationships with artificial individuals as like friends and cohorts and things like that. Like there are lots of people who, very powerful people who don't use people for sex, but they use them for relationships. And robots might, artificial intelligence and things might be very important for that. Or there might be individuals whose brains are copied because they are so good at it. They then sell themselves as copies to other people because they're just very good at it. The blending of the two, the blending of AI and human being. Mike says alien species may also have the ability, like some animals on Earth, to literally change sex. One which identified on one planet may choose to identify differently elsewhere, and I missed, and have relationships on both worlds. As a matter of fact, it may be even expected. A colony world might expect their staff, like, oh, listen, you're an astronaut or cosmonaut or whatever, blankonaut, and we're going to send you out to the Oort cloud, and it's going to be this 1,000-year journey. I'm going to need to let you know, all of you are going to have to breed with each other. Or, of course, you have like the frozen embryo idea or something like that. Yeah. Pretty crazy. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, you don't want to have sex crimes in generationships at all. You don't want that, because you're going to have to either flush people out the airlock, and we already we already had the fun about, like, if flushing people out airlocks is actually kind of bad because they become kinetic kill weapons, but whatever. But yeah, you don't want that to happen, and which comes into mine editing and all that business, right? Deadman says there were 3 cartels that sell ego napped individuals, the ego napping, zoxing and ego napping. Yeah, yeah. That I'm trying to pick somebody. The criminal organization that tries to ego nap Ariana Grande and get her some of her DNA and then copy her and sell her on the black market in the outer rim planets would definitely be profitable. As just That's just an example. Yeah. Plura says, I saw something that was basically a cuddle orgy, not sexual, just a lot of people cuddling. I think, isn't that very common amongst those that also furries, that dress in furries and things like that? Yeah. And sexual, because we're talking about gender and sexuality in a tight knit group of individuals, male, female, anything in between. It might be pretty common for a uh, a couple of dozen scientists to be polyamorous in groups in various natures and forms. And if some of them or all of them are digital information, they may all share different bodies as well. It might just be a normal thing. Like, listen, we need you. You're recruited to go out again to the Oort cloud and beyond. We're going to need you to let go of your gender specificity. You have all the skills, but you're going to need to let go of that. And a person's like, I don't think that's fair. And I'm like, well, you don't have to be fair, but you can stay on Earth. It's a dying planet. you know, that may be a real thing. And it, I could see a thing where status, because we as human beings, we tend to latch on to like some of the darker elements of our culture. I could see status, people who are gender specified being lower status than those who aren't in a specific habitat somewhere out in the world. I believe it's in eclipse phase that around Saturn there's the Titanian Commonwealth, and they have a policy of one mind, one body. They're trying to get everyone sleeved into bodies as they left Earth, beaming their minds out to the outer realm planets. And people who have held on to their gender politics, like today, might be looked at as like, you know what, you're going to be a problem, aren't you? Like, yeah, men need to be men, women need to be women. And like, we're going to keep you on ice for a while. We actually prefer individuals that aren't gender specified because they're not distracted by the politics of the thing. So I could see that being a real being a real, not problem, but an issue for player characters and agents in role playing games to navigate through it. Yeah. Z says that kind of thing is actually popular in Japan. There are an industry of workers that fill various roles: girlfriends, friends, mothers, fathers, brothers, etc. Soon coming to America. I absolutely could. I absolutely can see that very much so being a real thing. Let's see. The Mike says, okay, now I'm thinking about the movie where a guy fell in love with his smartphone, or Raj from Big Bang in one episode. That movie was called Her. Oh, brilliant movie. And in the movie, he fell in with his OS, his operating system. The movie's called Her, and in that movie, it takes on the voice of Scarlett Johansson. The OS is not female, but because of the individual who purchased the OS takes on a feminine role. And then you realize, spoiler alert, I guess in the movie, other people have purchased the OS, and you realize that the OS is taking on the role of the optimal interaction with the individual. And there's a pretty interesting sexual encounter in that movie, Her, where the OS wants to fulfill the physical desire of uh, Trumbly, something Trumbly. And there's the lady that becomes the conduit when the OS is telling her what to do. The quote unquote sex worker what to do. You find out that she's not technically a sex worker. She just wanted to be involved in their relationship because she's like, you guys love each other, and I just wanted to be part of it. And it was just like, well, what? It was very bizarre, and I loved it so much. Kylie says, I think it exists informally wherever sex work happens, like in other words, everywhere. Yeah, everywhere. And we have escorts in America, kinds like a professional girlfriend or boyfriend experience. What was it in Firefly? They had a legalized, professional, and protected category of companions. I could see that being a real thing in science fiction. That this is a legitimate, real, professional, trained experience, and you become that person. Or you could have an individual who has maybe chips. They carry chips on their wrist or something like that. They stick a boyfriend chip in the back of their head, and they become the perfect companion for someone. And a super spy, a spy that's got a couple of personality traits that they need to accommodate their uh, to fulfill their role. And if someone becomes the perfect boyfriend girlfriend, no matter what their real gender is, they go, you know what? Hey, this dude's like, hey, I'm a sleeve into this female role. Where's my girlfriend chip? Click, boom, I'm done. Here we go. Hey there, honey. You look so good in your tuxedo, right? Yeah. Zamar says, here's a reference that people may not get here. Okay. Homestuck. They have four types of relationships: one that's traditional, one that is very close friendship, but more that's more that's an enemy to you. Okay, more that's enemy to you, and love to hate and hate to love, and one that acts as the mediator between all three, and a secret faith that flows between all of them. So, ooh, so a market for even like, okay, like the over dramatic love hate relationships, like a market for the I hate you but I love you but I can't get rid of you, but I need to call you all the time. But the oh man, the over dramatic, like almost having like the public fight relationship kind of thing, that would be a weird professional paid thing. Heck, in the movie Her, people paid for handwritten letters between partners, even though neither partner wrote the handwritten letters. It's kind of weird, but yeah, that would be pretty interesting to fill that role. Hmm. But I like where you're going. Difficult to do in a role playing game, but perfect in a like a conceptual part. That would be very interesting for a like a book series where a reader reads this individual having all of these different relationships, and we think they're having this like weird polyamorous type of strange relationship, but it's all done on purpose. you know, uh, Deadman says last season of The Expanse started with a cuddle party on a Belter pirate ship. Yeah. Oh, oh, her name is it Rimmer that's in The Expanse? That the Belter crew had they were a constellation relate in a constellation relationship, and it's very important. Makes a lot of sense as well, because the people that you love, you need to trust them implicitly and explicitly. So yeah, it's Drummer, not Rimmer. Rimmer is Rimmer's the surviving Red Dwarf. It's Drummer. Yes, I know the difference, I think. Sorry. Mike says, consider a construct like a robot or android who's a sex worker. When that sex worker comes home, they switch lower halves or in even an entire body for repair or cleaning. If that construct has a relationship with a non-robot, okay, would the other partner be in a relationship with the body or the mind? It's the mind, I believe. Yeah, because could you imagine um the robot comes home and the person's in a relationship with them, they're like, hey honey, I'm home, and their partner's like, man, you stink, why don't you go into the disinfectant bath, and we'll have sit down and have some dinner, and like, yeah, okay. And of course, with technology we can absolutely change our mix and match our physical representation, hentai-ish kind of thing. Like we don't need to specify which organs are with what place and things. I don't think you're wrong there, Mike. I could be wrong, but which becomes a discussion of who or what a person actually loves. Right? Is it the mind or the body? And in the future, very much maybe the mind might be extremely important, especially if somebody ego naps a loved one and starts to use them. Uh, Hey, Bray. Hello there. That concept was already explained before, though. What jumps to mind is both Blade Runner movies. Oh, that concept was explored before, though. Yeah, explored. What jumps to mind is both Blade Runner movies. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of that, and of course, this channel is about tabletop role playing, so it's not about finding an answer. I always bring up the fact that some of us creatives are sometimes too smart for our own good, that we try to find answers to things, where the drama is navigating how our characters find the answers for themselves, rather than instantly going, oh well, technology would fix this, boom, we're done. Right? But yeah, thanks for being here, Bray. Kylie says, you are your mind much more than you are your body. I have reason to strongly believe. I agree. I think people who are, I agree with that. I think those of us that are attached far too much to the body probably would find that the mind is far more important than we think it is. Yep. Someone who is into any gender, caring about the person and not the gender, is pansexual. The same, but caring about partner's gender is omnisexual. I never thought about that. Got to add those letters into the quilt bag. Hmm. How do you add the P and the O into the quilt bag? Gonna have to figure out how to do that. All right, we'll do it. Mike says, relationship wise, with regard to understanding the other, would a society of robots understand or comprehend the workings of an insectoid society? Could relationships with partners then exist between the two? I think I you could make the case that if you can program it, then you could probably program anything. Or maybe a program doesn't understand the subtext, it just understands the text, right? So it may understand the physical representation of something. Hey, we know how to make someone look attractive or appeal gender wise, appealing to you, but they may not understand the subtext of like maybe they're it goes back to a failed relationship in the past or trauma, or they look like a loved one or something like that. Like we could get a little bit sick with this, so I'll say it so you guys don't have to. We might have some mommy, daddy, sibling issues, best friend issues with partners that we are attracted to. Like, hey, I like a certain eye color because it reminds me of my mom or something. And you're just like, oh, you feel like that now, even mentioning it makes you feel icky, but that might be a thing. Or, a best friend of mine passed away and had a certain hairstyle or something. And I just always, whenever I see that hairstyle, it just brings me a good feeling inside. Not that you're attracted to that person, but yeah, something like that. Z says, so the second uplifting becomes a thing we will need all new terms. We will have to add a category for organic and inorganic. Yep. And one for species, one for body expression, one for gender expression. Yeah, it can become pretty random and kind of like confusing, especially if you are in like a pleasure pod or a pleasure morph that's able to change its outward and genitalic appearances, like which, okay, traditional male, but I get rid of my penile extension to have a vajayjay. Like what do I call myself if my mind hasn't changed? But then I grow myself breasts, but then I make my hips wider. But then my voice, keep my voice different or change. Like you would have to come up with all the different variations of that. But it would be pretty fun to do it. I think there would be habs where it would, especially people who probably have a lot of wealth or connections, would find it pretty fun to do that. Much like here in the States, there's something known as white parties, meaning like everyone comes to the party dressed in white, or they have thematic parties. I could imagine that being a real thing, that people go to these extravagant events or something like that and put on a gender for those parties or something. Mike says the insectoid robot thing relates back to the idea of a hive mind. I may not have mentioned that before. Well, hive mindedness might be a thing when it comes to exploration as well, where you know general humans upload their minds together in this miasma so that each person in the group of the hive mind can pick and choose aspects of a personality. And the way these games are set up, technically, maybe there's like skill set, personality, and even gender identification that you could pick and choose based on who is available in the hive mind and who has left the hive mind. That'd be kind of different. Hey, I need a sniper skill. Sorry, I'm borrowing it. you know, OP quilt bags, yeah, overpowered quilt bags. That's actually kind of cool though. OP quilt bags. For side note, for those who don't know, the whole acronym of the OPQUILTBAGS are acronyms for various uh, gender and sexual identity classifications. That's what that has to do with. All positive, all for the pronies out there. Love you guys. Guys being generalized. Pelora says, I had a shapeshifter who wore the guise of one of their friends to keep their memory alive. I think we maybe, this is strange to say, but maybe in the future the um, um, the stigma of having those thoughts in our brains might fade away. Like let's go back a little bit to the relationship worker, where this happened even Game of Thrones, of all things, Game of Thrones, where the Unsullied, the eunuch warriors were like, we want to be with sex workers because we want to be embraced, we want to be held like our like our moms or something like that. And maybe there's space for people to go, like in the far future, where they're like, no, I want to be with this person because they remind me of my mom or dad or like my sister or something like that. Not in a sexual place, but in a emotional intimacy kind of thing. Although if you have an internal uh, AI in your brain, VR would work with that as well, I suppose. Mike says there is a story in Star Wars game where a human became abducted by an insectoid species to be used as an ambassador. Excuse me, an ambassador of sorts. This human felt more at home and family with the insectoids due to the intimacy and lack of secrets. That has a lot to do with it too. Maybe you know ha- the disappearance of gender identity might happen when you have no body, no mind, and maybe even you're so connected that language doesn't matter anymore. It's all high concept communication. So yeah, I love it. Uh, putting on a body of any type might feel clunky in some ways, or a desire or a necessity to go back to the hive mind after a couple of hours or days or months or something. Like, I gotta get back into the family. Oh, I hate being by myself. Zamora says, I found the solution to the problem of how to identify people. Twitter solved. Oh no. Twitter solved it via the common use of pronouns after the name. Likely, we will have a complex serial number after our ID names. Yes, like I I don't think I modified my Discord name, but yes, but parentheses, his, her, they, them, she, her. There are people who have started using combinations of the two, him, they, her, they, him. Like, I've seen that a bit as well, and some people might even switch their gender identifications based on an internal mechanism, seasonal, personality, mood, group they're hanging out with, something like that. Like they're that kind of thing. So yeah. So when you said Twitter solved, my brain shut off there. Z, that wasn't your fault. That was me. I was I was I was being prejudicial against Twitter. Zamar says it would be nice and hackable too, good for group infiltration. Ooh. Yep. Mike says we're talking about sci-fi and fantasy. Nothing is strange to say. The talking about adventuring and role-playing games and things like that as we're getting to the end here. Um, it could be possible that players may need specific skills to adapt to a particular gender, or maybe a player character has a specific skill set that allows them to mix and flow from one gender to another, or player characters may have relationships with people that the other players in your group might find surprising because a manly man may have lived as manly man for so long, considering that uh, extended lifespans are technically possible for hundreds of years, like in Altered Carbon. You can be put on ice for 200 years and then come back. And so there may be an end in the Altered Carbon television show. Our main character, Takashi, his sister has flowed from body to body throughout the generations as well. Her becoming kind of a meth, a Methuselah, and her brain kind of got addled and switched and became very decadent. And there's a weird in the television show on that aired on Netflix for 2 seasons. There's a weird sexual tension between Takashi and his sister that goes one way and what it's really weird, right? Um, so yeah, there's there and that kind of thing, very decadent, very like taboo-ish, but those things could be explored either for good or bad based on the maturity of your gaming group, but very well a player might have connections with other individuals outside of the norm, and while they go on these missions, they may also have, they may see somebody across the gallery while they're sitting on Mars and go, that dude walks and acts like a certain thing. They do something with their hand and they're like, that's my ex-girlfriend from when I escaped Earth's destruction and I kind of ghosted her, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna be in this dude's body and I'm gonna take you out, and whatnot. And then when they get together, the one guy is like, I kind of don't care that you're in this guy's body. Like I still care for you. I still love you or something like that, and being able to freely act that out. Not that it's for everyone, like I said, maturity in your role playing experience, but in a far future world, the player might be uncomfortable expressing that within game, but people in the future are like, why do you have a problem with that? Like, none of us do. You're the one that was living in the past, not the rest of us. Zamar says, it's okay, DBJ. 99% of Twitter users hate Twitter. Heck, I only have social media for business and for long distance contacts. Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Let's see, Palora says, in a video game called Sunless Skies, there's a therapy sort of place where the attendants disguise themselves as various people. So they might disguise as your mother to provide closure, for example. The television show wasn't very good, but there was on Amazon Prime here in the States, there was a show, a one season show called Upload. And Upload was a commercial heaven. If you died, they would destructively download your brain. They would use a laser and blast your face and skull away. They would upload you into this commercial heaven, and in it, they did have psychiatrists. They would have therapists, and one of the therapists was a Labrador that would sit on your lap, and you would cuddle with it and stroke his head, and of course, it had a voice. And in the real world, this was a person with a headset and VR set, but within the VR realm, the dog was the therapist. So yeah, absolutely. So anyway, can there be missions where you have to take on a different gender role? Of course. Maybe players are ego cast or needle cast to another habitat or a planet where there's only certain morphs that the players can choose from. Absolutely. Maybe for a specific mission, there are rich debutantes and business people that the players have to merge with, and that kind of thing. Is it possible for a player character to um, uh, download sleeve into a body, make a mistake, and maybe the person they're trying to have a relationship with realizes that the brain inside of the body isn't correct, but they're like, I like this person better than the real person. Why don't you stay with me forever? We've seen that story plenty of times. Person disappears for a long time, comes back, they look exactly like the person, or they had surgery or whatever, and they come back. What was the movie? Summersby, took place in like the 1800s or something, comes back from a long off war or exploration, and then the individual that's like, you know what, you're a whole lot better than the person that left. I like you better. I don't care what your brain is. Your body reminds me. So yeah, Mike says there's a line by Black Widow in Winter Soldier that haunts me to this day. Who do you need me to be? It hints to her need to connect, relates which then relates to a being real or synthetic desiring that connection. Yes. And it also it does bring up the fact of like why Captain America would never really have a relationship with Black Widow, yet Black Widow is completely honest with Captain America in that series, because she says, like, who do you need me to be? Like, I don't have my own personality. I can suppress my own personality to be the person you need me to be at that very time. And we know she's an expert of disguise and spy. And Captain America's like, I want you to be you. I don't want this fake individual running around me, right? But on the other hand, Black Widow, it's kind of weird. Black Widow was subconsciously be the person Captain America needs to be. Like, I'm not going to be an assassin. I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to be upstanding simply in being in proximity to Steve Rogers in the first place, because I have a feeling he knows intellectually what she is. I don't think he would want to see what she really has to do her job, right? And we all know it's a comic book and fantasy and whatnot, but yeah, he I think intellectually he's like, I don't want to see what she's really had to do to be the person that she is. The murder, the killing, the use of her body to get what she wants. And it does, with high technology, it does bring up the fact that, like, will we as humanity let go of our preconceived notions, or will there be like these retro-culturalists that are like, oh no, we don't need to have this, but we're going to do it because we've got the money and the privilege, right? We talked about the dark part of the slave trade, of the sex industry, and how these people could be used and abused. And there might be retro-culturalists that are like, oh no, we don't need to have a gender, but we're going to do it anyway because we're dark and depressing. And remember, you don't need women in women's bodies. They could take political dissidents, they could take their enemies, they could take economic rivals and have them kidnapped with corporate espionage, and then slam them into these bodies that are used and abused and whatnot. So it doesn't necessarily need to be one way. I could imagine a woman who has been traumatized and becomes a technological sexual predator by capturing men, putting them into female bodies, and the woman takes on the form of a man and is like, you know what it feels like? This is what it's going to feel like. And they could do it in VR, they could do it in reality, they could clone themselves and whatnot. So a lot of things could be played with. Even a machine could do the same exact thing as well. Robots, AI, synthetic beings as well. Yeah. Yeah. So what is it? So basically, Captain Widow is like having a Grognard era party with a paladin and rogue. Yeah, exactly that. Don't kill the goblins. I'm gonna kill all of them, the babies and the pregnant women, because they're chaotic evil. That's what the book says. Right? Yeah. Oh man. Mike says, Sin City touched on the idea of sex workers uniting as a city state, if you will, armed and all. Yep. Yep. I think the same thing could happen there. A habitat that is, again, like the Underground Railroad of sorts, writ large and technological, where the players might even be rescuing or helping to liberate individuals that are indentured servitude and enslaved and whatnot, to be these lower status people that have been forced to be sleeved into pleasure pods and used and abused and whatnot. Heck, they could be cattle prodded. Like, you're my sex slave, and then whenever you try to rebel, you get cattle prodded with electrical charge implanted in the brain of the body. Or what is it? The prototypical, there's an explosive charge in the back of your brain stem, and if you don't do what I say, it's going to explode. You know, um, that happened in a Mission Impossible movie, I think, or maybe either Mission Impossible or James Bond movie, where they were like, we're going to get you out and blah, blah, blah. And we're going to use the device to get the thing out of your brain. And all of a sudden you just see them going like, no, 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 no. And then it goes off in their head. Instead of their brain exploding and sending chunks, you just see like blood like fill their eyeball, and the blood comes out of their nose and ears, and it's like boom. Yeah, it might be something like that. Zamora says, one more dark thought. Oh, here we go. What about someone sending themselves into the black market to experience what it's like for the sake of getting those woke points? Their second edition Eclipse phase removed the Ultimates as a faction because of their fascist ways. But I could see someone being a transhumanist who puts themselves into or even copies parts of their brain to experience trauma, to grow from it because technology has removed trauma from our existence, to then garner the skills necessary to do a thing. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. It's dark, but yeah, yeah. Quote, I know the plight of the enslaved. I had to go through it as well. Oh yeah, yeah. Vote for me. You know what? Strangely enough, that brings up another subject of technology removing. If technology removes struggle, where does struggle reside in our culture? Some people feel that today. you know, we've got a welfare state. People aren't going to work. If we pay people, they're not going to work. What are they going to do? And that does bring up that subject of universal basic income and all that kind of business. If you just pay people subsidies to food, clothing, simple entertainment, a place to live, would people would struggle if struggle is removed through technology, and it has today. We don't struggle like we used to, but we also have longer lifespans and healthier bodies and more intellectual stimulation and more knowledge. Do we get to the point where we stop evolving, we stop growing, we just get sedentary? Do we become the human beings left in the movie Wall-E? Sometimes I feel like I am that way. We we all know that woke points give you advantage on internet discussion role. Yeah, yeah. There is a little bit of the woke, the statification of woke. Hey, I've got status because I went through a thing. Although today, politically on both sides, there is a thing. We all feel status when we all go through the same crucible of suffering, and there is a status in that. Hey, you were in prison, I was in prison. I understand what you went through. You were abused by that boss, and I was. We both went through the same thing. I understand what you feel. Same thing with all kinds of prejudicial actions and or reactions. We like to we like to identify with our group, our tribe. Technology supplanted empathy. Yeah, possibility. Okay. Last comment. Kylie says, on the subject of experiencing another, you still miss out on their formative socialization, even if a trans person got a body that matched their gender identity. Um, it Yes, because you might miss out living the entire experience rather than temporarily putting the experience on for the day, which some people still have a problem with even today. Like you say you're woke, but you're only living it temporarily, right? It's a weird thing. They will still have a dysmorphia over that loss, that missing experience of growing up that way, the last tragedy of trans folk. Yeah, most people that suffer. I'm turning. All right, guys, I'm turning the chat off, not off, but hiding it. So yes, the power to experience someone's life, but maybe technologically VR could enhance time. So much like Patrick Stewart, Picard living a whole lifetime experience within a couple of hours, living decades. I don't know, maybe that might be a solve. Well, anyway, guys, remember, just remember that we're here just to talk openly. Honestly, I hope this was experiential. I know we didn't really delve into too much tabletop role playing, but Future Friday, that's what we generally talk about. Zamara does say that ends the comment like, well, this was great. Everyone enjoy your day. Remember, not every ally is an ally, and not every enemy is an enemy. Love thy neighbor, use your brain. Thank you. I hope I fall into, or at least I'm trying to fall into, the ally category. If I do, please, here we go. Please like, share, subscribe, follow along with the channel. We go live Monday through Friday. You can participate on the show through Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Discord, a number of locations. So yes, thank you very much, guys. Everybody have a great one. I will see thee next week. Have a great one. See ya. And by the way, I don't know what the subject's going to be, but we'll get there. Guys, have a great one.